The story opens in a world that feels safe, celebratory, and familiar. A setting designed to lower defenses and reinforce the belief that nothing truly bad can happen in plain sight. South Beach is alive with music, laughter, and flashing lights, filled with young people celebrating milestones and freedom. Madison and Sophie move through this environment with the easy confidence of youth. Surrounded by friends, phones in hand, documenting joy rather than sensing danger. Everything about the moment suggests protection. Crowds, visibility, social energy, and the comforting idea that public spaces are safer than dark alleys or isolated streets. This sense of security is not accidental. It is a cultural assumption deeply ingrained in modern life. The illusion of safety is strengthened by familiarity. The girls are educated, socially connected, invisible online. They believe awareness and technology offer protection. Location sharing, constant communication, and social media presence feel like shields against harm. Yet these same tools become vulnerabilities. Their openness, their digital footprints, and their predictable behavior patterns allow strangers to observe, profile, and select them with chilling precision. What appears to be freedom is actually exposure. The story quietly reveals how modern safety rituals can create a false sense of control. The kidnapping itself is not chaotic or dramatic. It is methodical, silent, and fast. The criminals do not rely on force at first. They rely on deception. They blend into the environment, using appearance and behavior that signal trust rather than threat. A helpful stranger, a concern for intoxicated partygoers, a moment of confusion in a loud crowd, these are all socially accepted interactions. The attackers exploit kindness, social norms, and the assumption that danger looks obvious. In reality, danger looks ordinary. Time plays a crucial role in reinforcing the illusion. 95 seconds is all it takes. Less time than most people spend sending a text message. In that brief window, the girls go from carefree celebration to captivity. The speed emphasizes how quickly safety can collapse when predators are prepared and victims are unsuspecting. There is no prolonged struggle, no dramatic chase, no screaming crowd. The absence of spectacle makes the act more disturbing. Evil does not announce itself. It slips quietly through gaps in attention. The environment itself becomes complicit. The crowd, the noise, the lights, and the constant movement provide cover. No one intervenes because nothing appears out of place. The girls are guided, not dragged. The van does not speed away. It leaves calmly, indistinguishable from hundreds of other vehicles. The setting that felt protective becomes a shield for the criminals. Public space, rather than preventing harm, becomes the perfect hunting ground. This moment exposes a deeper truth about perceived safety versus actual safety. Society teaches that danger is rare, dramatic, and obvious. The story dismantles that belief. Danger here is calculated, patient, and informed. The kidnappers observe, analyze, and wait. They understand psychology as much as logistics. They know people hesitate to interfere, assume others will act, and rationalize what they see. The illusion of safety is not just personal. It is collective. The disappearance of Madison and Sophie highlights how systems respond slowly to sudden loss. When phones go dark, the first instinct is denial. Batteries die. Signals drop. Young adults make spontaneous choices. These explanations delay urgency. The gap between disappearance and response becomes critical. The story shows how predators rely on this gap, knowing that the first hours will be filled with confusion rather than action. The illusion of safety extends beyond the event itself into the aftermath, where normal explanations are favored over worst-case realities. Emotionally, the abduction marks a violent rupture between innocence and awareness. One moment the girls are laughing, planning photos by the water. The next, they are disoriented, drugged, and powerless. The transition is abrupt and irreversible. The narrative emphasizes that trauma does not require prolonged exposure to danger. Sometimes, all it takes is a brief lapse between assumption and reality. By framing the abduction as efficient rather than chaotic, the story forces the reader to confront an uncomfortable reality. Preparedness beats innocence. The criminals succeed not because they are stronger, but because they are ready. The girls are not careless. They are normal. That is what makes the event unsettling. It suggests that safety is not guaranteed by good decisions, intelligence, or social standing. It is fragile, conditional, and often illusory. This keynote establishes the foundation for everything that follows. It strips away the comforting belief that bad things only happen in isolated places or to reckless people. It shows that danger thrives where people feel most secure. The abduction is not just a plot device. It is a statement about modern vulnerability. The illusion of safety shatters in under 2 minutes, leaving behind silence, absence, and a question that drives the rest of the story forward. What happens when the world fails to protect those it promises to keep safe? Jessica Hayes is first presented as an ordinary woman living an intentionally quiet life. A yoga instructor in a calm Coral Gables neighborhood. Someone who appears to have chosen peace over chaos. Her days are built around routine, discipline, and mindfulness, practices that suggest healing and balance rather than conflict. To the outside world, she is simply a divorced mother who rebuilt herself after hardship, focused on wellness and raising 2 intelligent daughters. This surface identity is carefully maintained, not as a lie, but as a deliberate transformation. It represents a life chosen, not a life imposed. Yet beneath that calm exterior, the past never truly disappears. Even in moments of stillness, Jessica's awareness remains heightened. Her mind tracks sounds, patterns, and disturbances automatically, not out of anxiety but conditioning. Years of elite military training have rewired her instincts at a fundamental level. The habits of vigilance, risk assessment, and rapid pattern recognition exist beneath the yoga mat, dormant but intact. The story makes it clear that this is not something she consciously practices anymore. It is simply who she has become. When her daughters' phones go dark at the same moment, that dormant identity stirs. The initial reaction is maternal, not tactical. She searches for rational explanations, clinging briefly to normalcy. But unlike most parents, Jessica possesses a second internal framework for interpreting events. The simultaneous loss of both signals, the precise timing, and the last known location trigger calculations that override hope. This is the moment where the mask begins to crack. The yoga instructor wants reassurance. The former Delta Force operator recognizes a hostile event. The contrast between these two selves becomes sharper when she contacts emergency services. The procedural calm of the dispatcher clashes violently with Jessica's internal urgency. To the system, this is a routine call governed by rules and timelines. To Jessica, it is a live operation with a rapidly closing window. This interaction exposes a fundamental weakness in bureaucratic protection. It is designed for averages, not exceptions. Jessica does not reject the system out of arrogance, but out of understanding. She knows how quickly people disappear once predators gain distance. Her decision to act is not impulsive. It is precise. Walking into her closet and revealing the hidden compartment is symbolic. It represents the crossing of a line she hoped never to cross again. The gear inside is not nostalgia or indulgence. It is contingency. She never fully abandoned her former life. She simply locked it away. The act of reopening that space is an acknowledgement that some threats cannot be met with patience or trust. The mother becomes the operator not because she wants to, but because she must. The call to her former commander is a moment of quiet gravity. It confirms that her past still exists, still responds, and still recognizes her authority. The exchange is brief, professional, and loaded with unspoken history. There is no surprise, no disbelief, only acceptance. This reveals that Jessica's reputation has not faded. She is not remembered as someone who quit, but as someone who survived and excelled. Her reactivation is treated not as an anomaly, but as a return to function. As intelligence begins to flow, the transformation completes itself. Her movements become efficient. Her thinking narrows to objectives and probabilities. Emotion does not disappear, but it is disciplined, channeled into focus rather than panic. The story emphasizes that her strength lies not in rage, but in control. She does not rush blindly into danger. She gathers data, maps patterns, and reconstructs events. This is the mindset of someone trained to operate in chaos without becoming part of it. At the same time, The maternal element never vanishes. Every decision is anchored to her daughter's survival. Unlike her military missions, this is not abstract. The stakes are intimate and personal. This combination of professional detachment and emotional clarity makes her uniquely dangerous to those who underestimate her. The criminals see a yoga instructor on social media. They do not see the strategist capable of dismantling their operation piece by piece. This keynote reframes power and identity. Jessica is not a superhero suddenly discovering hidden abilities. She is a woman who once chose violence in service of duty, then chose peace in service of love. The story argues that identity is layered, not erased. Skills learned in extreme circumstances do not disappear. They wait when the moment demands it. They resurface with terrifying efficiency by revealing the mother behind the mask. The narrative establishes the central force of the story. This is not about vengeance or spectacle. It is about inevitability. Once the girls are taken, the outcome is set in motion. The system may move slowly, but Jessica Hayes does not. The illusion that she is harmless is the kidnapper's greatest mistake. And the story makes it clear that from this moment forward, they are no longer the hunters. They have activated something far more dangerous than law enforcement or chance. They have awakened a woman who is trained for exactly this kind of war, and who has only one objective left in the world. Once Jessica Hayes commits to action, the balance of power shifts decisively. What began as a calculated crime quickly becomes a hunt in which the hunters lose their advantage. The men who abducted Madison and Sophie rely on secrecy, time, and the assumption that their victims' family will be helpless, slow, and dependent on formal systems. That assumption collapses the moment Jessica activates her operational mindset. From that point forward, every move the criminals made becomes traceable, predictable, invulnerable. The transformation is evident in how Jessica approaches the investigation. She does not search randomly or rely on hope. She reconstructs the event from the ground up, treating the abduction site like a battlefield. Tire marks, oil residue, scuffed concrete, and discarded objects become data points. Each detail contributes to a three-dimensional mental map of what happened, how long it took, and who was involved. This methodical analysis strips away the criminals' perceived invisibility. They did not vanish. They left signatures behind. Technology becomes a force multiplier rather than a crutch. With access to off-book intelligence systems, Jessica leverages surveillance tools designed for counterterrorism and covert operations. Traffic cameras, satellite imagery, and facial recognition are not used broadly, but surgically. She narrows the field with speed and precision, identifying the van, its route, and the people connected to it. The criminals believed their digital manipulation created blind spots. Instead, it creates patterns that someone like Jessica can exploit. As identities emerge, the psychological dynamic reverses. Derek Vaughn and his crew operate with the confidence of men who believe they control the tempo. They assume their victims' families will react emotionally and waste time. Jessica does the opposite. She uses emotional restraint as a weapon. By staying disciplined, she forces the criminals into the role of reactive prey. They are no longer planning. They are waiting, unaware that their countdown has begun. The first direct confrontation with Marcus Cole illustrates this reversal perfectly. Marcus is not taken in a dramatic raid or violent ambush. He is isolated, pressured, and broken with minimal force. Jessica understands leverage. She targets fear, guilt, and desperation rather than brute strength. Marcus talks not because he is tortured, but because he realizes the balance of power has shifted completely. In that moment, the operation begins to unravel from the inside. This encounter highlights the difference between criminal confidence and professional dominance. The traffickers rely on intimidation and secrecy. Jessica relies on certainty. She knows their structure, their habits, and their weaknesses. She does not threaten vaguely. She names locations, times, and roles. Knowledge becomes her primary weapon. The criminals realize too late that they are no longer dealing with an abstract victim, but with someone who understands their world better than they do. As information accumulates, Jessica's strategy becomes clear. She is not reacting emotionally to each discovery. She is dismantling a system. She identifies hierarchy, dependencies, and choke points. Drivers can be flipped. Enforcers can be neutralized. Tech operators can be cut off. Leaders can be isolated. This structured approach transforms the narrative from a rescue mission into a counteroffensive. The traffickers' organization, built on compartmentalization, collapses once someone sees the whole picture. Time, which once favored the criminals, now works against them. Every hour that passes increases their exposure. Jessica's speed denies them the opportunity to adapt. They do not realize they are compromised until it is too late. This is the defining shift of the story. The criminals lose initiative. They become static targets while Jessica remains mobile, informed, and invisible. The emotional undertone of this phase is controlled fury. Jessica's motivation is intensely personal, but her execution remains professional. The story emphasizes that this is not revenge-driven chaos. It is disciplined violence, applied only when necessary. Her restraint is what makes her effective. She does not seek spectacle. She seeks outcomes. This distinction separates her from the men she is hunting and reinforces her moral clarity. The phrase, "the hunter becomes the hunted," is not symbolic here. It is literal. The traffickers are tracked, profiled, and pressured using the same techniques they once used on their victims. Their enmity dissolves. Their confidence erodes. Their network fractures under pressure. What they thought was a controlled operation turns into a liability-filled trap of their own making. By the end of this key phase, the story has fully inverted the power dynamic. The abductors no longer dictate events. They respond to them. Fear, once monopolized by the victims, now belongs to the criminals. This shift is not sudden or dramatic. It is gradual, methodical, and inevitable. The narrative makes it clear that once someone like Jessica Hayes enters the equation, escape is no longer a possibility. The hunt has begun, and there is no place left to hide. The warehouse assault marks the point where planning gives way to action and intention becomes irreversible reality. Every step Jessica takes toward the building is measured, deliberate, and rooted in experience earned under far harsher conditions. This is not a reckless charge driven by emotion, but a controlled advance shaped by years of operating in hostile environments where hesitation meant death. The silence of the industrial district amplifies the gravity of the moment. There are no crowds to hide behind, no noise to mask mistakes. Here, precision is the only protection. Jessica's approach reflects an understanding that violence, when unavoidable, must be decisive. She studies the building as if it were alive, reading its angles, entrances, blind spots, and rhythms. The guards, habits, their boredom, their predictability all become liabilities. She waits, not out of fear, but because timing is everything. When she moves, it is because the moment favors her completely. This patience is what separates trained operators from impulsive attackers. Control, not speed, defines dominance. Inside, the environment shifts from open space to confined darkness. The air is stale, the sounds muted, the tension constant. Jessica navigates without hesitation, her body remembering what her conscious mind barely needs to instruct. Each movement is efficient, economical, and silent. She avoids unnecessary confrontation, bypassing obstacles rather than engaging them, because her objective is not conquest. It is extraction. Everything else is secondary. When violence occurs, it is swift and final. There is no hesitation, no warning, no excess. The men inside the warehouse are not underestimated, but they are outmatched. Jessica's actions are guided by clarity rather than anger. She neutralizes threats before they can react, removing uncertainty from the equation. This is not brutality for its own sake. It is precision applied under extreme stakes. The story emphasizes that mercy in such moments would not be kindness, but risk. The emotional tension peaks as she moves closer to where her daughters are being held. Every instinct urges her forward, but she resists the pull of urgency long enough to ensure control. Maternal instinct and tactical discipline exist in constant tension, each threatening to overpower the other. Jessica's strength lies in her ability to balance both. She does not suppress her love. She channels it into focus. Love becomes fuel, not distraction. The confrontation with Derek crystallizes this balance. He recognizes too late that he is no longer dealing with a powerless parent. His attempts at intimidation collapse against Jessica's calm authority. She does not raise her voice or posture aggressively. Her confidence is quiet, absolute, and terrifying. In that moment, power is not defined by physical size or numbers, but by certainty. Derek understands that bargaining is meaningless because she has already decided the outcome. Seeing her daughters is the most dangerous moment of the mission. Not tactically, but emotionally. The sight threatens to undo the discipline that carried her this far. Fear, rage, and relief collide in a single instant. The story makes clear how thin the line is between control and collapse. Jessica's ability to remain functional in that moment is the culmination of everything she is trained for. She secures the threat first, not because she lacks compassion, but because she understands that safety requires completion. Her interaction with her daughters is brief but powerful. She reassures them with presence rather than words, communicating safety through calm rather than chaos. Even here, she remains vigilant, aware that the mission is not over until every variable is addressed. This restraint does not diminish her humanity. It defines it. She protects not only their bodies, but their sense of stability, refusing to let them witness unnecessary violence. The dismantling of the operation from within reinforces the theme of ruthless precision. Information is extracted, recorded, and preserved. The network is exposed, not through spectacle, but through methodical unraveling. Jessica's goal extends beyond rescue. She understands that survival without accountability leaves the threat intact. By securing evidence and identifying connections, she ensures that what happened to her daughters will not happen again to someone else. This phase of the story redefines heroism. There is no triumphal celebration, no dramatic flourish. Victory is quiet, controlled, and incomplete without justice. Jessica does not linger in the aftermath. She moves forward, transitioning seamlessly from operator to protector, guiding her daughters out with the same care she used to bring herself in. The warehouse assault is not just an action sequence. It is a statement about resolve. It shows what happens when skill meets purpose without hesitation. Jessica's precision is not coldness. It is love sharpened into action. In that space of concrete and shadows, maternal devotion and professional discipline merge into a single force. The story makes it clear that this combination is unstoppable, and that once unleashed, it leaves no room for error, escape, or mercy where mercy would cost innocent lives. After the warehouse falls silent, the story shifts into its final and most revealing phase, where consequences replace confrontation and meaning emerges from survival. The immediate danger has passed, but the weight of what has occurred settles heavily on everyone involved. Jessica Hayes does not experience relief as a burst of triumph. Instead, it arrives as a controlled exhale, a recognition that the threat has been neutralized, not erased from memory. The mission may be complete, but its imprint remains. The return to normal life is not instant or effortless. Jessica understands that rescue is only the first step in healing. Her daughters are physically safe, yet emotionally fragile, carrying fear they cannot yet articulate. She prioritizes stability, routine, and reassurance, recreating a sense of safety through presence rather than explanation. She does not overwhelm them with details or dramatize the ordeal. Instead, she anchors them in normal moments, allowing their nervous systems to settle before their minds attempt to understand what happened. The legal and institutional aftermath unfolds in parallel. Evidence collected during the operation begins to expose the trafficking network in its full scope. Arrests follow, not as isolated wins, but as part of a systemic collapse. The story emphasizes that justice here is methodical, not cinematic. Courtrooms replace warehouses. Documentation replaces gunfire. This transition reinforces the idea that real victory lies not in violence, but in prevention. By dismantling the structure that enabled the crime, Jessica ensures that the rescue has lasting impact beyond her family. Public recognition, when it comes, is subtle and incomplete. Official records are sanitized. Media narratives simplify events into digestible fragments. Jessica's role is minimized by design. This anonymity is not a loss. It is a choice. She does not seek validation or praise. Her satisfaction comes from knowing the threat is gone and her daughters can sleep without fear. The quiet erasure of her actions mirrors her earlier disappearance from military life. She returns to invisibility because that is where she is safest and most effective. Internally, however, the cost is undeniable. The reactivation of her former identity leaves echoes that cannot be ignored. Sleep is lighter. Awareness remains elevated. The calm she once cultivated through yoga now requires deeper effort. The story treats this not as weakness, but as truth. Violence, even when justified, alters the person who wields it. Jessica does not romanticize what she did. She accepts it as necessary, while acknowledging its toll. Her relationship with her daughters evolves subtly but permanently. They sense her strength in a new way, not as fear, but as certainty. Trust deepens, not because she explains her past, but because her actions proved reliability under unimaginable pressure. She becomes not only a source of comfort, but a symbol of protection. This shift is handled with care, emphasizing that strength does not have to be loud to be felt. The narrative closes the arc by returning Jessica to the life she chose, not the one she left behind. She resumes teaching, moving through familiar poses with renewed intention. The studio becomes a space not just of calm, but of integration. Mindfulness and discipline are no longer separate chapters of her life. They coexist. The warrior and the healer are no longer divided. They are reconciled. The broader theme crystallizes in this resolution. The story is not about glorifying exceptional violence or exceptional individuals. It is about the latent strength carried by those who have survived extreme responsibility. Jessica is not transformed by the ordeal. She is revealed by it. Her choices before and after the crisis define her more than her actions during it. She fights not because she loves conflict, but because she refuses to surrender what matters. In the final moments, there is no grand declaration or closing speech. The power of the ending lies in restraint. Life continues. The danger has passed. The world moves on, largely unaware of how close it came to disaster. This quiet ending reinforces the central truth of the story. Real heroism often goes unseen, and the strongest people are those who return to peace after proving they could choose war. Keynote 5 completes the narrative by grounding it in consequence and continuity. It affirms that survival is not the end of the story, but the beginning of responsibility. Jessica Hayes does not emerge as a legend or a myth. She remains a mother, a teacher, and a guardian of an ordinary life made possible by extraordinary resolve. The story closes not on action, but on meaning, leaving the reader with a sense of closure that feels earned, sober, and deeply human.